You know, I think there are very few people in Europe or in continental United States and the North American continent that thought this man would stand up and come to the aid and assistance of Ukraine. He increased his military budget. He stepped up Japan, because he understood that when any part of the world has 185,000 people, soldiers crossing a border, stealing sovereignty from another nation, that it affects the whole world. I want to thank you again publicly. We just concluded the first meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council, and all our allies agreed Ukraine's future lies in NATO. That's not a surprise to any of us, I don't think. I hope it's not a surprise to you, Mr. President. Allies all agreed to lift the requirements for membership action plan for Ukraine and to create a path to NATO membership while Ukraine continues to make progress on necessary reforms. But we're not waiting for that process to be finished to make the long-term commitments that we're making to Ukraine's security. Vladimir and I shouldn't be so familiar. Mr. Zelensky and I talked about the kind of guarantees we could make in the meantime when I was in Ukraine and when we met in other places. And so today, the long-term commitments we're making are backed up by the notion that in the meantime, we're going to provide security to Ukraine for its needs and against any aggression that may occur. Today, the members of the G7 are launching a joint declaration of support for Ukraine to make it clear that our support will last long into the future. This starts a process by which each of our nations and any other nation who wishes to participate will negotiate long-term bilateral security commitments with and to Ukraine. We're going to help Ukraine build a strong, capable defense across land, air, and sea, from which will be a force of stability in the region and deter against any and all threats. I want to thank my fellow G7 leaders and President Zelensky for their work to make this happen. I think it's a powerful statement of our commitment to Ukraine as it defends its freedom today and as it rebuilds the future. And we're going to be there as long as that takes. And again, I thank all my colleagues for their support for this.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, President Biden, Prime Minister Kishida, Chancellor, see you, Chancellor Scholz, Prime Minister Sunak, President Macron, Prime Minister Trudeau, Prime Minister Meloni, President Michel, President von der Leyen. Great honor to be here. The outcome of the NATO summit in Vilnius is a very much needed and meaningful success for Ukraine. And I'm grateful to all leaders in NATO countries for very practical and unprecedented support, considering decades of our relations support for Ukraine. Today, there are security guarantees for Ukraine on the way to NATO, an important package of security guarantees. Today, we are coordinating with the G7 countries the framework for security guarantees that shall be further extended through arrangements with our key partners, bilateral and multilateral agreements. And Ukrainian delegation is bringing home significant security victory for the Ukraine, for our country, for our people, for our children. It opens for us absolutely new security opportunities, and I thank everyone who made it possible. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thanks you, thanks Lithuania and Jens Stoltenberg. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.
President Biden made very clear that, look, this joint declaration is all about a long-lasting future of security for Ukraine, that the U.S. and other NATO allies will be involved in. Tell us about the significance of this, even though they're not getting NATO membership at this particular summit.
Yeah, really what President Biden and these leaders are trying to do is put behind some of the tension that arose heading into this summit about the fact that Ukraine would not be offered a concrete timeline into NATO. And instead, they are trying to show what they can offer Ukraine in the here and now and also long term down the road. This declaration that was announced today by the president and G7 leaders will essentially jumpstart talks between each of the countries to have these bilateral long term security commitments. President Biden saying that the support will last long into the future. And what officials, and you also heard the president there stress, is that they want to ensure that Ukraine not just has the ability to defend themselves now, but can also deter and defend themselves against other future aggression. And so much of this is trying to send a message directly to Russia. That is what this entire summit has really been about for President Biden, as he's been trying to show the strength and unity of NATO, especially as we've also learned that NATO could soon be expanding as Sweden could join the alliance. And what the president has repeatedly tried to point to is that the U.S. is one of the strongest backers of Ukraine as far as sending military aid to the country. And now they're going to try to extend these long-term security commitments to them into the future. And so in just a short while, we will also see President Biden and Zelensky sit down one-on-one, face-to-face for a private meeting. We expect reporters will be allowed into a portion of that, which will be another show of unity that the president can demonstrate against Russia as Vladimir Putin continues to wage this war against Ukraine, as officials here at the summit have been arguing that the shows of strength, the shows of unity and support for Ukraine and within the alliance show that Putin's war is backfiring against the very thing that he had hoped against.
And as we've been watching, as you were talking, Arlette, we were watching live the family photo of the G7 leaders in the gathering with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Nick, what does that photo represent? What does this moment represent?
Yeah, I think what we just witnessed is President Zelensky being the consummate diplomat for Ukraine. He may not have gotten quite what he wanted, but he took it well. Look, what we got, the version of Zelensky we had yesterday was the warrior diplomat coming in, charging, demanding something that given a timeline. Absurd that he didn't get it, he said. But there he was standing on the stage with the leaders of the G7 nations and a couple of EU presidents there as well, and he called them all out by name, thanked them all by name. This is him being a diplomat, and I think the piece of diplomacy that wrapped it up there, and this is what is signaling back home, and I think is signaling that he feels he got as far as he could go. He said, we can bring back home a significant security victory. So he is telling his people and is telling his interlocutors that he's got as good as he could get, that these security guarantees that will be negotiated, these long-term guarantees and partnerships that would now begin to be negotiated, this is good. This is what he wanted. He didn't get 100% of what he wanted, but he's got enough to take home. And he knows he's pushed it as far as he can go this time. But we've all seen Zelensky before. He will keep this up about trying to get NATO membership, making sure it's fast-tracked, thanking everyone for everything that they've done, thanking them for taking out one of the steps to membership, pointing out that they've been doing a lot together already, and that helps the situation. And that shows that Ukraine is on the right path, postured and positioned to become a European Union member as well as a NATO member. So yes, this was the diplomat, the real consummate diplomat version of Zelensky we just witnessed.
Thanks, Nick Robertson, for that analysis. Let's go to Kim Dozier. I want to ask you about NATO itself and where it's at right now, because back when Donald Trump was president, it was no secret that at one point he discussed pulling the U.S. out of NATO and trying to sort of weaken that alliance. How does what happened in this particular very important summit strengthen NATO? You've got one more country that is now going to be allowed in, and does this put a lot of pressure on Vladimir Putin?
Well, it does bring it up to 32 once Sweden is officially in. Of course, Hungary's parliament has to ratify that first, as well as Turkey. But what it does is send a powerful message to Moscow that, combined with these new security guarantees towards Ukraine, that this is a marathon for NATO, not a sprint. That if you thought that you, Vladimir Putin, could wait us out and use the mass of your population, 4 times the size of Ukraine, to grind them down, we're going to be here the whole time, keeping them supplied. And we're also going to be we're going to keep sanctioning you. We're going to keep putting you under economic duress. So the combination is NATO's stronger. Bringing Sweden and Finland in, they both actually have pretty advanced defense industries. That strengthens NATO militarily. So overall, this is a win-win for NATO and lose-lose for Moscow. And one last thing, Biden allying himself in this way with Ukraine will make it really hard if there's a change in U.S. presidents come the next election for any future president to back away from this support.